I think in the very early couple of months, it was like, oh, let's just speak to every single investor
Yeah.
like that is potentially investing in anything, and like we'd waste
Yeah.
hours on calls, and you'd get kind of like frustrated because it would be no, no, no. And then when you actually start
Right.
to like do your homework and start going, okay.
This is another episode of the Founders Pack podcast. My guest today is Collette Doyle. How are you doing, Collette?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. And Colette's business is Shelfleet, and you guys are a Techstars Austin graduate, and you are currently in Kenya.
I
That's
am
correct.
indeed, yes.
Well, first of all, thanks for joining me. For people that don't know, I guess, first of all, who is Collette Doyle, and why are you in Kenya?
Yes, yeah, very random. So I'm Irish. I'm from Dublin. Traveled a lot, so been across many countries. I think I counted the other day, and it was like 52 countries.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, pretty cool. Someone was like, "How many countries have you been in?" And I was like, "I'm actually not sure." So I proceeded to count every single one.
Wow.
My background. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's amazing. Sound like my flight itinerary, but very
Yeah,
similar.
so my background is really I worked in retail for I think 12 years. I basically started off working physically in stores, moved into kind of the head office where I worked in marketing, promotions, merchandising, every possible job that you could ever have in retail. And then moved into the technology world where I worked with startups for a number of years, growing Visua is now one of the startups, which was an AI company. And then I set up my own digital marketing agency about 4 years ago, ran that for 2.5 years, and then actually started Shelfleet in August, which would be now 2022. So we're just over a year and a half old. Shelfleet, really, so sorry, yes, why am I in Kenya was the question. I'm in Kenya because I also run a nonprofit as well. We work with uh, children and the community of kind of slum areas within Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya. Here we work with them on different projects like high school sponsorship, helping them with food program, literacy, computer skills. So yeah, I've been very passionate about doing that for the last 6 years, along with my co-founder Christina. And yeah, it's called the Utu Foundation if you want to check us out on Instagram.
It's Utu or Utu?
Utu, yeah,
Utu. Okay,
Utu,
that's
so
what I thought.
UTU. Yeah.
That makes
It
more sense.
basically is the it's the Swahili word, which is the language of Kenya. So it's the Swahili word, which means like everybody is equal, everybody should be treated the same, everyone should be kind to everybody. So
Oh, that's great. What a wonderful theme. Okay. All right. And
thank
then
you.
Shelfleet, your startup, what was the big problem that you noticed that made you want to start this?
Yeah, so when I was running my digital marketing agency, I saw a lot of brands really struggling, particularly D2C brands, so brands selling directly to customers. I saw them really struggling to kind of firstly find new audiences, secondly try and reduce customer acquisition costs because digital marketing had become so expensive. And at the same time, my co-founder Sierra was working in physical markets, so she had set up, these type of farmers markets in Austin. And the two of us came together, and we've always kind of stayed friends. We used to work together a number of years ago, and we were talking about, these big problems. Brands are really struggling trying to get in front of new audiences, and costs to get new customers are getting so expensive. And so I actually started doing some trainings with some of the brands where I was helping them with Instagram ads and Facebook ads. And actually, Sierra at the same time was helping them with consignment into retail stores. And one of the retail stores said, like consignment's such a pain for us. We really, it's just really annoying at the end of the month trying to figure out what I owe everybody and getting stock in that I don't really want and not knowing how to merchandise. And why can't I just rent out my shelf space? And so both of us were just like, whoa, this is actually maybe an idea.
That's
This actually
interesting.
has something there. It was like the light bulb moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were like, whoa. So we kind of sat down. I was actually in Kenya at the time. Sierra was in Austin. And we had a couple of calls and we were like, there's definitely a business idea here. There's really an area that people are struggling. So we started working with these farmer markets brands and small boutiques. We very quickly realized that they weren't our target audience, that actually brands that were more kind of, progressed. So D2C brands that maybe had like 1 to 2 million revenue a year, had like, 10,000 plus on Instagram. We're actually more of like a kind of serious brands that we wanted to work with. And at the same time, the small boutique chains were also really struggling with like trying to, manage and merchandise. So we kind of randomly stumbled into the idea of working with service-based businesses. So yoga studios, spas, coffee shops, hotel groups, that would have kind of retail area, but don't always know what to do with that retail space because they're not merchandisers, they're not buyers, they're not retail experts. And that's really where we want to come in, as kind of partnering with these service-based businesses and helping them to, really grow their retail side of their business.
That's awesome. What was your Techstars experience like?
It was absolutely fantastic. So Amos, who is the managing director of Techstars Austin, is, I think, one of the sweetest, but also most straight talking men I've ever met in my entire life. And I just love that. If he thinks an idea, am I allowed to use the word shit on this podcast?
Whatever you want.
Sure. Well, if it thinks something is shit, he'll tell you, which I really like about him. And Caroline and Danny are also like the coordinators. I think Techstars as a whole is just like a very professional organization. It's got amazing mentors, fantastic investors. I think the support that you get as an entrepreneur is, even after the program, is second to none. I mean, we still have like Techstars Slack channels, and you can always email anyone and they'll do intros, and it's just fantastic. So yeah, I really value that experience so much.
Awesome. All right, if you could offer other founders only one piece of advice, what would that be?
Don't listen to everything that everybody tells you, because you will spend a very long time trying to figure out what's right and what you should do. I think having a very firm like vision in your head of like, roadmap of where you want to go, how you want to get there, and like obviously listening to advice, but taking it all with a pinch of salt. Because I know for the first couple of months, even in Techstars, we were meeting with 10 plus mentors a day. And if you weren't really firm in your idea, like it's incredible. You're open to so many people, but it's also a lot of information to take in. So, someone could be like going, oh, you could become an e-commerce business. And you're like, well, that's not what we do. And someone else is telling you, oh, you should do this. And it's just like, unless you're very firm to like your values, your vision, and your roadmap, it can be very distracting very quickly. So yeah, my key piece of advice would be like, really focus on where you want to go and how you want to get there, and take everything else with a pinch of salt.
That makes sense. What has the role of community and/or partnerships in your case been in your success so far?
Yeah, I think in terms of partnerships, like we've been really, really lucky. We've been through a couple of different incubators. So we're currently actually going through Grid 110, which is a kind of diversity and inclusion focused on female and diverse entrepreneurs, which has been really nice to see, because definitely in that space right now for fundraising and stuff like that, I know it's been pretty hard hit, particularly for Black female founders. So it's just been great to hear like firsthand experience about the differences, how females versus males are being treated in the whole kind of investment and VC world, and also just being given tools to deal with different things. Because I mean, it's not always like one size fits all in the VC or investment world.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I always hear, I think people think VC are your only investment option, and particularly as like you're in the kind of in that DTC commerce space. That's usually not who's going after this, is it? Like there's usually other types of investors. So I think it's interesting that I keep hearing that, and I think people go to the wrong people sometimes to ask for the thing they want, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that was also something that we've learned very quickly. So we're going through like our pre-seed round at the moment. And I think in the very early couple of months, it was like, oh, let's just speak to every single investor, like that is potentially investing in anything, and like we'd waste hours on calls, and you'd get kind of like frustrated because it would be no. And then when you actually start to like do your homework and start going, okay, like let's look for investors who've invested in companies like ours. Let's look for investors who are in this stage. Let's look for investors who are interested in female founders or who maybe have a portfolio that aligns with us.
Yeah.
that's so much more useful in terms of your kind of time. And I call that like the business development stage, where you're almost kind of doing your own due diligence before you meet with them. So
I really want to encourage people to think through that lens, because I think there's a very different focus. I meet a lot of founders, obviously. Male founders tend to have very tech businesses, right? Sometimes very niche tech businesses, and that aligns a lot with VC. But then I find female founders have much more interesting creative businesses and maybe brand-based businesses, and that doesn't align with VC. So if you're a female founder or any other founder that has a business, that maybe just consider your audience, because I think you can attribute it, the reason that you're getting a no, and everybody gets a ton of no's, right? Like you're going to get 200-300 no's before you get the right yeses.
Completely.
So if you want to save yourself a lot of time, understand it's not just who you are, but it's also what you're doing. Make sure it's to the right audience. So
completely.
I want to encourage.
Yeah, and I think
my own
you're
advice
so
on
right.
the podcast, but
no, you're so right. You really are. Like, I think, particularly like some males, when they hear, oh, retail technology, they're like, we don't care about shopping.
They're
it's
not
like, well, it's not shopping. And if
right.
they're not interested, but unfortunately, most kind of investment, most VCs, they don't have the time to listen to every single pitch. So like your short snippet needs to be, exactly aligned with what their focus is.
You hit it on the head.
It's not for everyone.
Well, and so tomorrow is another one. This is our second winner takes all pitch event, by the way. If you ever want to do a pitch because you're raising, we'll connect you with Noah. We'll have at least one more pitch event this year. But, our methodology is very simple. Be able to make a 1-minute pitch, rapidly prototype, and go talk to the person you say is your real customer or your real investor and prove it. So saves you a lot of other pain.
Super cool.
Doing that slow. So, but I think you hit it on the head. That 1-minute pitch is super important. Not only what you're able to get the message out, but who you're saying it to. It's got to be the right
exactly
person.
And why should they care?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do want to be conscious of your time. Collette, thank you so much for joining me. I know that you're far, far and away in Kenya, and I look forward to following your journey. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I'm active most, I think. Just send me a message. Would love to hear from you. And obviously follow our Instagram page. So our Shelfleet Instagram page, or if you want to see my nonprofit stuff, it's Utu Foundation as well.
So we will include those in the show notes because I think they're super important. And I'm definitely interested in learning more about Utu as well as Shelfleet. So these are both exciting things. And I think our paths are going to cross physically somewhere. We seem to have very close travel itineraries, although not exact yet, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. You mentioned intros and how important that is with Techstars. I want to invite you to Intros by Founders Pack. It's an automated weekly introduction between members. So you'll meet other founders that are doing interesting things. So I'll send you an invite to that.
Lovely. Thank you.
Oh yeah, great. I'm glad. I think you'd be amazing in that. So let's include you. The final thing is, when we meet interesting people, we actually like you to introduce us to other interesting people. We typically talk to founders or investors in scalable startups, lots of Y Combinator and Techstars founders, Hustle Fund. Who would you, Collette, like to nominate as a featured guest of the Founders Pack podcast?
I actually would really like to nominate Caroline, who is the program manager for Techstars, because I think it could be super interesting to hear from someone that's kind of in the middle of the investor and entrepreneur space, and someone that has so much experience with so many different companies and entrepreneurs. So I mean, if that sounds like something that would be suitable, I think she'd be amazing.
Terrific. We would love that introduction. Caroline, you've been nominated as a featured guest from Techstars in Austin, I think you said, right?
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. Okay, I'm excited to do that. Collette, I look forward to connecting with you soon. I'm also curious, I wonder if we're related somehow, because my cousin,
I'm sure we are,
Joe Doyle, and his wife is Pauline. And I'm like, wait, I wonder.
I'm sure if we look back far enough.
Maybe
if we look back far enough, I'm sure we are, yes.
Okay, we're going to follow up and see. All right, well, this has been another episode of the podcast. Thank you, Collette. I'm so glad we connected live, and I look forward to following your journey.
Thanks so much, Michael. Bye. Take care.